Hey, it's Mike Hambright with FlipNerd.com. Welcome back for another exciting VIP interview where I interview some of the most successful real estate investing experts and entrepreneurs in the industry to help you learn and grow. Today, I'm joined by Jensen, who runs the property management operation for Gentry Real Estate Group in Arizona, where they've managed as many as 1,200 doors at a time. Property management is not an easy business, and many of us wouldn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole, me included. But it's important. I mean, it comes with the territory of building wealth through rental properties, and it's something that needs to be done right. Otherwise, you won't be building wealth, I assure you. So today we're going to have kind of a property management 101 show, kind of a lesson to help you learn what's important in property management, and we're going to make this as educational as possible. So before we get started with Gene, though, let's take a moment to recognize our featured sponsors. RealtyMogul.com is an online marketplace for real estate investing, connecting borrowers and capital from accredited and institutional investors. Get a rehab loan fast and close in as little as 10 days. Rates start as low as 9%. We'd also like to thank National Real Estate Insurance Group, the nation's leading provider of insurance to the residential real estate investor market. From individual properties to large-scale investors, National Real Estate Insurance Group is ready to serve you. Please note, the views and opinions expressed by the individuals in this program do not necessarily reflect those of FlipNerd.com or any of its partners, advertisers, or affiliates. Please consult professionals before making any investment or tax decisions, as real estate investing can be risky. Hey, Gene, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, glad you're here. So it's a really interesting, this is one kind of a little bit different format than what we typically do. Typically we just kind of get right into the entrepreneur and learn their story, but property management is such an important thing to get right and an expensive lesson if you get it wrong. We kind of talked beforehand about having kind of a lesson, so I think that'll be interesting for the folks listening. But before we get started with that, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and your background and Gentry?
Sure. I got started in real estate in, 2006 as a recruiter. And I actually got to talk to 50 to 100 agents a day and learned a whole bunch about the business and decided, I can do this too.
Yeah.
It sounds like fun. Everybody really wants to work for themselves, right?
Yep.
So that was the plan. In the downturn of the market here, when we hit about 2008, I managed bank-owned properties and negotiated short sales.
Okay.
So I certainly have my experience with distressed properties. I feel like I always choose the hardest part of real estate because now I'm in property management.
Yeah, well, of course, being in Arizona too, that's kind of the epicenter for difficult real estate over the last few years.
Right.
Yeah. So, and for those that are listening, we had Spencer Caldwell, who's one of the owners of Gentry, on the show a while back, and he buys the other side of their company buys a ton of houses at the auction, and that's essentially fueled the property management business, right? They would basically assist people buying houses at auction from an agent or brokerage standpoint, and then ultimately manage them as well.
Exactly. Yeah, our property management division stemmed from our auction company and our clients' needs for buy and hold management, and they've sold over 7,000 homes at auction over the last 7 years or so. So you can see how that would definitely feed our property management division, and we take pride in being a full service company. So you need to, so it's easy after you purchase your property in order to create passive income.
Yeah. So as we kind of talked about in the intro, or as I talked about, I guess, property management is kind of a necessary evil for a lot of real estate investors. I mean, ultimately everybody's looking for passive income, building wealth, things like that, but it still has to be managed, of course, and if it's mismanaged, then you won't be building as much wealth as you hope. So why don't you talk a little bit about just the importance of quality property management, whether it is somebody doing it themselves or hiring that out?
Right. Well, you want to make sure that you're educated in what it's going to take to be a landlord before you jump into it, because a lot of people don't realize how much work it is. It's not a part-time job, usually, if you manage your own properties. You need to make sure that you're educated not only on the area so that you make a good investment, and your property is actually going to be cash flowing and building equity over time, but also that you're educated on the state and federal laws so that you don't get yourself in trouble with landlord-tenant acts, repair issues, things like that. So it's really important when you're going into real estate investing, if you are looking to be a buy and hold investor, to make sure you're educated on the area, so that you get what you're looking for out of it, which of course is passive income and wealth building over time. But also make sure that you're protected, that your property is protected. You have good tenants in there that aren't going to destroy the property. Use a screening company. If you run into problems, which is going to happen in any facet of real estate, you need to make sure that you have a plan in place in order to be able to take care of it in a timely fashion and professionally as well.
Yeah, I think in my experience, I think where a lot of people get into trouble is they tend to way underestimate the expense for turnover and vacancy, maintenance and make-readies, just kind of, especially turnover. And I know a ton of people in real estate and people that manage some of their own rentals, and they'll say, well, somebody moved out a couple weeks ago. I'm just finishing up, the make-ready to get it rent-ready again. It's like a couple weeks. Like, you just lost rent for half a month. Plus, it still has to be leased out. Plus, they're going to drive back and forth showing it and all those things. And, maybe the biggest expense that a lot of folks don't consider is the opportunity cost of their time. Like, what else could they be doing if they're not doing that?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Well, vacancy is always going to be your biggest expense, in real estate investing and buy and holds. It's important to have a marketing plan in place so that your turn time is quick and a team of vendors that can actually get your property rent ready again in a timely fashion. Tenant renewals are also absolutely a reflection on your property management skills. If you're not responsive as far as repairs go, if the tenants don't feel like they can reach you, they're probably not going to be happy in the property, and you're probably going to experience a lot of turnover. So, if you can do it absolutely on your own, make sure you're educated and that you stay on top of things, and hopefully you'll have a good relationship with your tenants and they stay for a long time. Because I've seen that before too.
Yeah.
We'll get really lucky and have tenants that stay in their property for 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
But, that's a very small percentage.
Yeah.
Turn times, absolutely. Staying on top of repairs for your tenants are going to eliminate or at least minimize your vacancy rates.
Yep. And what do you talk a little bit about the legal side of it? Because I think a lot of people don't really consider that either. And some states are very different than others, very landlord friendly. Some states are anti-landlord, or it feels like it. Very difficult to get people out. And in all honesty, there are, I lived for a while, I lived in Washington, D.C. This was a number of years ago. And I remember reading an article in a newspaper, and it literally was like an op-ed piece on how to live in a property for free for a year. And, and it literally was like a how-to article for basically how to get around paying rent and how, the landlord can't get you out. I mean, it was crazy, but that stuff happens and people don't really consider that.
It sure does. Yeah. On that end, if you run into an eviction scenario, you need to be comfortable with the county laws, what it's going to take, certified mail notices, to make sure that they can't deny receiving any sort of 5-day notice, any sort of, attorney notice to reclaim the property, and then, what it's going to cost as well in order to do this. Typically in Arizona, it's not that great of an expense, about $300 to $500 depending on which county you're in.
Yeah.
But it definitely helps to have an attorney, on call that will file these things in a timely fashion for you, because they are segmented into, 5 days for this, and then once you get served with the attorney notice, 10 days for this.
Right.
So you want to make sure that you're familiar with the laws of the county in your area, and that you have somebody that can help you process that paperwork when you need to.
Yeah, yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about, I wanted to kind of talk about the case for hiring a property manager versus doing it yourself. And I know you're going to be biased in terms of hiring a property manager. In all honesty, I have a portfolio of rental properties, and we don't manage them ourselves and never plan to. I just know that my opportunity cost is too high. And in all honesty, it's a difficult business to scale. I mean, I think when you work with a property manager that has hundreds of units, then they can scale it. But on your own, I just think for 8 to 10% on average of what property managers charge, your time, most people's time is much better spent finding more deals or enjoying life or whatever it is, other than dealing with tenants and toilets and termites and all that stuff.
Right.
But kind of give the case a little bit, and we've kind of talked about a number of these things for using a property manager. We've talked about a number of these things already, but some other reasons why somebody should use a property management company more so than do it themselves.
Well, I think all of us in America really strive to have passive income. I mean, that's the goal, isn't it? That's the American dream.
Yeah.
To be bringing in monthly cash flow, building wealth, and not have to work. There's always going to be a problem that arises every once in a while that maybe you need to get involved with if you hire a property management company. But for the most part, that's the coolest part about it, is you generate long-term wealth, monthly cash flow without having to do anything. We all work to live, right?
Yeah.
And not to work, or at least the majority of us.
Yeah.
Property management's a dirty business, and I don't think people realize that until they really get into it and start to get their hands dirty.
Yeah.
I am biased, but I really think, it is worth the 8% or the 10% to give yourself freedom of time, to go look for the next investment. Also to protect yourself from liability, and nobody wants to take a phone call in the middle of the night because your tenant's toilet is overflowing.
Right.
Right. That's well-versed property management companies will have a 24/7 maintenance line, so you never have to deal with things that arise like that, unless it is like a major cost. And then if it's a really good property management company, they'll get 3 bids for you and contact you about what's going on with your property.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a reason why, and I know you're biased, and I'm biased, I guess, because I want folks to listen to the show to not have regrets, like managing their own properties. I don't know many people I know people that have had bad experiences with property managers, and now they take care of it, and they're just more comfortable because they've had bad experiences. But I don't think there's anybody that's ever said, "I really love managing my own properties. It's just something I enjoy doing." I mean, that's crazy. But for those that are listening out there, we've had tons of other folks on the show that talk about lead generation for real estate, and some common sources are absentee owners, which basically means people that are probably renting their property out and they don't live there themselves, and even going to like the eviction courthouse or wherever evictions are done and try to find landlords there. And it's largely because these people are managing it themselves and they're about to rip their hair out. So,
right.
But enough kind of harping on that. So why don't you talk about some of the things that property managers do? And again, if somebody wants to do this themselves, then these are things they're going to have to do as well. But if we talk about specifically like the leasing side of it, like what, and I don't even know exactly what you guys do, but just share what a good property manager does to keep properties leased and then to keep tenants there as long as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, when you're looking for a property management company or looking into managing it yourself, you want to look for occupancy rate in a property management company. Anything over 90% is usually decent, and that means they have a shorter turn time and will have a lower vacancy rate for you.
And what did you call that again? That's the occupancy rate?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, occupancy rate above 90% is usually a good indicator that they're going to do a good job and really aggressively market your property and get tenants in there. On another note, you don't want to take the first tenant that comes along. There are a ton of people looking for housing, and you want to make sure that you get the right person in there. So I think I said previously, use a screening company. there are a number online that you can go sign up for to run credit and background checks. Or if you're using a company, some of us use private investigators and run 3 separate checks on the tenants.
Okay.
Make sure you're going to have the least amount of problems throughout your lease term as possible. Somebody can afford the property, so you're not going to deal with phone calls saying, my washing machine broke last week, so, I'm short and I'll pay you on the 15th. At 3.5 times the rent is the going rate.
Right.
So make sure that somebody has enough income that they're not going to be in a tough spot. Then once the property is leased, it's been marketed and hopefully leased within 30 days. You want to make sure that you can stay on top of all repair needs, have open communication lines if there's a problem. And if you're out of state, make sure that you have a trusted network of vendors that can handle problems that arise. So that's another thing that property management companies will do for you. We refer a lot of business to repairs. So you can usually be sure, because of that bulk volume, that you're getting the best price possible when you use a property management company. If you don't, make sure you build good relationships with those people that will do the same for you.
Yeah. And do you guys, so you guys don't actually do the make readies yourself, you outsource that and get multiple bids, is that, understand?
Correct.
Yeah.
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 We'll assess what it takes to get a property rent ready. What that means as far as our guidelines go, and send a bunch of bids, and then hopefully, get the property rent ready within the next week.
Right. Yeah, I think in some experiences that I've had in the past with property managers, these were early lessons for me. Hopefully there'll be lessons for others that are listening, but it's really important, and again, I don't know exactly what your payment structure is, and we don't necessarily need to talk about that, but that your property manager is not incentivized to turn over properties. And what I mean by that is I had a property manager, again, this was a very early lesson, to where they were incented. They basically got paid about a month's rent for each time they rented a property, but they tended to make a lot. They did all of the make readies themselves, and then they just charged us. And so what happened was it became clear that the guy was making far more money doing make readies than managing the property. And so every time that property would turn over, he would get paid a month's rent to release it. Plus he would get paid probably several months' rent to do the make ready. Right. And if you're structured that way, it's human nature that they're going to do what they're incentivized to do. And in his instance, whenever somebody gave him any problems or had any problems at all, he would just get them out as fast as possible. And then the burden would be, the financial burden would be on us, because he was making a lot of money basically just churning tenants. And so I think it's really important to make sure that your property manager is aligned with your interests financially. So.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It should be always clients first. The goal of any good property management company should be to keep as much money in their investors' pockets as possible. Yeah. And that's how you keep a good property management company, running. Is A, you keep tenants in there for monthly cash flow for your investors, and B, you keep your clients happy. It's always should be the investor needs first. We work for you. The tenant is just a customer. Mm-hmm. So if you feel like that's not the case, then definitely start looking elsewhere.
Yeah, and I've also known some other people that have managed properties themselves, and they'll tell me that, we have very little turnover. We've had all these tenants. They'll use some metric about they've had people that have been here for a long, long time. And then what you find out later is, well, it's because they're charging way under market rents. And so they're kind of marketing it as OW. Hey, it's a win. I don't have any turnover. I don't have to deal with that. And it's like, well, but you're leaving. How much money are you leaving on the table by charging $200-300 less a month in rent? Yeah, you don't have any turnover, But what would I mean, it would cost you far less if you had a professional property manager. They kept the market rents in there. You had some turnover here and there, but you're collecting far more in rent. So kind of talk about that, the role that a property manager plays in making sure that they're getting top of the market rents, or kind of balancing turnover and rents.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's your passive income right there. You don't want to discount that. That's the point, right?
Yeah.
So a property management company will run a comparative market analysis for your property. They'll look at anything that has closed in your subdivision, or within a half-mile radius within the last 6 months. Which ones are the most comparable to your property and listed at the higher end? Because why not, right? If we use a good marketing strategy, then we want to get you as much money as possible on a monthly basis. We will also track for you the amount of showings that you get. So at that point, if your property isn't getting any showings at the listed price, then okay, maybe I need to go down $25.
Yeah.
Okay, and that will also help increase or decrease your turn time. Keeping on top of seeing how many people are going to see your property, how many applications you get in at the current market value that it's listed at, and making adjustments to compensate for that.
And do you guys ask prospective tenants as well? Like if they look at it and they say, well, I'm not interested in that. I mean, do you often ask them, can you give us some feedback? Why are you not interested in that?
Yeah, absolutely. If we're having an issue getting a property rented, meaning it's been on the market for more than 30 days, then we're going to start digging. We'll reach out to the people that have seen the property and ask them, what's going on here.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because it backs up to a freeway. So we need to, unfortunately lower the rent price $50. But, again, vacancy is going to be your biggest expense. So making sure that you're aware of what's going on while your property is marketed and making adjustments accordingly is going to put more money in your pocket, even if you have to lower the monthly rent price.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, talk a little bit about a good property manager's ability, or even for those that are looking for property managers when they're kind of looking for what to select, in terms of the class or the type of rentals that they manage. And let me give you some background. So for a while, when we started to accumulate rental properties, we kind of focused on what I'll refer to as kind of a B property. So probably just below median price point in our market, kind of entry-level homes. And then over time, we found that the ones that cash flow the best for us are more of what I would refer to as a C level. And still, very much working class neighborhoods, good neighborhoods. We don't buy in the hood or anything like that. We try not to, but the challenge I ran into was the property manager that I had at the time. I guess when we went from B to C, it was more of the C class tended to be more of the local little magazines, Thrifty Nickel type magazines and signs in the yard, and the B class was more of marketing them on the internet and finding people that way. It seemed to me to be a very different skill set at the time, and that some of that is just the specialty that this original property manager had. But just talk about the ability for property managers to manage different classes of properties, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. Each different type of property is a whole different animal.
Yeah.
So your property management company should be set up with different systems actually for C properties than they are for B properties. It is a different skill set, absolutely. You need to market yourself in different places, and the ability to handle the types of issues that come up with C properties. They're usually a little bit older. So things can go wrong with those properties a little bit more than the newer ones.
Yeah.
So some property management companies will specialize in a certain type, and some are set up to handle all of them. So you want to make sure that you share a lot about your investment, and make sure that it's the right fit for the company that you're choosing as well. Okay,
great. Well, I guess, can you spend a few more minutes just kind of making the case for why it may make sense for them to manage properties themselves, and if not, why a property manager may make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say if you're local and you're under 3 properties, it may be a good decision if you are well educated on your area and what it takes to be a landlord and protect yourself from liability. Get a good team around you, and at that point, it's plausible in order to manage your own properties and not get yourself in a whole bunch of trouble. If it starts being more than that, even at 3, you're going to have a full-time job.
Yeah, for
sure. But if it starts being more than that, it's absolutely worth a 10% investment to make sure that you're protected, and that your time is yours as well. I know we've talked a lot about passive income in this interview, but that's really the goal of buy and hold investments, with passive income and equity building over time. Once you feel that your plate is starting to get too full, now it's time to look for a good property management company. We've talked a little bit about what to look for. Somebody that has high occupancy rates, low turn times, somebody that uses a really good screening company to make sure that you get the best tenants in there possible and you're going to have the least amount of problems. And has a legal team should you need to get a tenant out. Unfortunately, those situations do arise, and it's no fun to deal with. So it's I would say a weight lifted off your shoulders. To hire a well-versed company and somebody that you can really trust.
Yeah, that's great. And I would tell people too, just a few words of wisdom from my experience, and this is not to knock the smaller property managers at all, but you just have to be careful. There have been a few different property managers I've been through that were individual people or husband and wife teams. And, we had a husband and wife team that they were like, first off, we had somebody, the first person that I mentioned that clearly made more money doing make-readies and turnovers and releasing than the property management, and took forever to get the properties ready. Secondly, then we moved to a husband and wife team that when we met with them, it was like, this is the holy grail. We wish we'd found you before. And lo and behold, a couple months into it, they're getting divorced and they've shut down their business without telling us. And oh, by the way, we haven't collected rent for like 6 weeks. And all these things that were just kind of a nightmare. And so I think it's really important that you, if you're working with a small team, find somebody that has a long track record and referrals, and that's somewhat of a case for working with more of a firm or a larger company, because yes, they have turnover, but they have backups to help fill in the gaps as they arise and things like that. So
right, absolutely. We're inheriting a lot of properties right now from somebody who had been doing it a really long time. He had really great relationships with his clients, but he fell off a ladder and broke both of his ankles.
Yeah.
So at that point, he's not going to be able to manage your properties, and you're going to be looking for a new company. So, it is great to have somebody who has backups, and you're not going to be in a situation, well, wait a second, we have to collect September rent. Where's it going?
Right. Awesome. Well, hey, thanks so much for, I wish we had more time. We're already kind of at almost a half hour now, but thanks so much for sharing all your insights on property management. If folks want to learn more about you or about Gentry Property Management, if they happen to have properties in Arizona, for example, where should they go to learn more?
Our website is www.gentrypm.com. You can always email me as well. I'm available 24/7 at gene@gentryaz.com.
24/7, really?
My phone's forwarded to my cell phone. Okay. You're never off work in this business.
Yeah, I understand that. Well, Gene, hey, thanks so much for sharing your knowledge today. We appreciate it. And for those that are interested in learning more about Gentry Property Management, we'll add a link down below. And for those of you that are managing your own rentals, think about your opportunity cost of your time. What else you could be doing with that time that ultimately may be well worth the investment to pay somebody else to do. So again, Jane, thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Mike.
All right. We'll talk to you later.
Okay.
Bye. Are you a member of FlipNerd.com, the most robust real estate investing platform in existence, where you can find off-market wholesale deals and great vendors literally in your market? You can get access to advice from experts and learn about local clubs and events right in your backyard. If not, please visit FlipNerd.com and register for a free account. You can register in less than a minute. It's pretty much the coolest site that's ever existed in the real estate investing industry. So get on over to flipnerd.com.